She was just a cleaner trying to get to work. One splash of mud changed her life forever. The woman who mocked her had no idea someone powerful was watching, waiting, and planning her redemption. It was a cold, quiet morning. The sky hung gray and heavy, like a blanket soaked in sorrow. The road was still slick from last night's rain, reflecting the dim streetlights that hadn't yet surrendered to dawn. Maya, a young woman in her early 20s, walked carefully along the roadside, her footsteps measured and deliberate. In one hand, she clutched a small brown bag containing her breakfast, a single piece of toast, and an apple. In the other, she held a pair of worn cleaning gloves, their yellow rubber faded to a pale cream. Welcome to the Black Side Stories. Before we continue, tell me in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, subscribe to our channel and help us share their stories. Her uniform was clean but worn, pressed with care despite its fraying edges. Her shoes were almost giving way, the sole of her left foot nearly separated from the upper, held together by careful steps and quiet prayers. Still, she walked with purpose, her chin lifted just enough to catch the first hints of morning light. She didn't want to be late for her cleaning job at Sterling Plaza Hotel. Not today, not ever. Maya had learned long ago that punctuality was one of the few luxuries she could afford to give freely. As she neared the main road, the distant hum of traffic began to grow louder. Then she heard it, the aggressive roar of a car engine, growing closer, faster. A shiny white SUV was speeding toward her, its chrome bumper gleaming like teeth in the dim light. Before she could step away, before she could even think to move, the tires hit a deep puddle with a violent splash. In one awful, suspended moment, muddy water erupted like a geyser. It splashed all over her, her face, her carefully pressed clothes, her small breakfast bag. Everything was soaked and dirty. The cold, gritty water seeped through her uniform, chilling her skin and her spirit in equal measure. The SUV didn't even slow down. Instead, the tinted window rolled down just enough to reveal a well-dressed woman laughing, a sound sharp and cutting like broken glass. Her lipstick was bright red, perfectly applied, and she wore oversized sunglasses despite the overcast morning. "Watch where you stand next time," she shouted, her voice dripping with disdain. "Some people have no sense." Then she hit the accelerator and zoomed off, leaving Maya standing there in the aftermath of her cruelty. Maya stood frozen, mud dripping from her hair, her lips trembling not from cold, but from the sharp sting of humiliation. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. She couldn't afford to cry. Not here, not now. She just picked up her muddy breakfast bag, now soaked and ruined, and continued walking, one foot in front of the other. Always forward, never back. What Maya didn't know was that from across the street, a black sedan sat quietly, its engine purring like a patient predator. Inside was a man named Marcus, a silent observer with sharp eyes and an even sharper sense of justice. He had watched the entire scene unfold. The splash, the laughter, the way Maya's shoulders had sagged for just a moment before she straightened them again, that Marcus's eyes narrowed as he watched the white SUV disappear around the corner. He knew. The woman behind the wheel, Isabella Rodriguez, heir to a fashion empire and daughter of a real estate mogul. She was famous for her designer clothing line and her overinflated sense of superiority. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have imagined, was that today her casual cruelty had been witnessed by someone who didn't believe in letting good people suffer in silence. He picked up his phone, his voice calm but carrying an undertone of steel. "Find out who that girl is," he said to his assistant. "I want to know everything. Her name, her story, her struggles, everything." Maya arrived at Sterling Plaza Hotel looking like a storm had personally targeted her. Her once clean uniform now bore brown stains that mapped her morning's humiliation. Her hair stuck to her face in damp strands, and her shoes squelched with every step. Announcing her misfortune to anyone within earshot, as she slipped through the staff entrance, trying to make herself invisible, her supervisor, Mr. Thompson, appeared. Like a thundercloud, his face was already twisted into a familiar scowl. "Maya, you're late. And what in God's name is this mess?" he barked, his voice echoing off the narrow corridor walls. She lowered her eyes, feeling smaller with each word. I was splashed by a car, sir." I tried to clean up as best I could, but no excuses, he snapped, cutting her off mid-sentence. Get to work. This place needs to be spotless before the morning guests arrive. And for heaven's sake, make yourself presentable. Maya nodded silently and walked toward the cleaning closet, her wet shoes leaving a trail of shame behind her. Her coworkers glanced in her direction. Some shook their heads in pity, others whispered among themselves, but no one spoke directly to her. No one offered help. In their world, everyone was too busy protecting their own positions to risk extending a hand to someone else. She changed into an old backup uniform she kept in her locker, tied her still damp hair up in a tight bun, and began her work. To anyone watching, it would seem like nothing had happened. But inside, Maya was rebuilding herself brick by brick, the way she did every day when life tried to knock her down. She thought of her little sister Sophia, still sleeping peacefully in their one-room apartment across town. She thought of the job she couldn't afford to lose, the bills that wouldn't pay themselves, the dreams she kept locked away for safer times. So she pushed through, as she always did, carrying her pain like a secret and her hope like a prayer. Meanwhile, across the city in a gleaming glass tower that pierced the sky like a silver needle, Marcus sat in his corner office. He wasn't just any man. He was one of the city's youngest CEOs, a quiet billionaire who had built his empire on careful observation and strategic patience. While others made noise, he made moves. His assistant knocked and entered, carrying a manila folder thick with information. Her name is Maya Patel, she began, settling into the chair across from his massive oak desk. 23 years old. Works 2 cleaning jobs, Sterling Plaza Hotel during the day and office buildings at night. Lives in East Valley, takes care of her younger sister. Their mother passed away 2 years ago from cancer. No father in the picture. Marcus stared at the photograph clipped to the file, Maya smiling gently beside a small child with bright eyes and pigtails. Even in the grainy photo, her kindness was evident, radiating from her like warmth from a candle. He tapped the photo lightly with his index finger. She didn't deserve that, he muttered, more to himself than to his assistant. His assistant raised an eyebrow. Do you want me to do something about it, sir? Marcus looked up, his eyes reflecting a decision that was already crystallizing in his mind. Yes, but not yet. Let's watch a little more. I want to understand her completely before we act. Isabella Rodriguez stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling mirror in her luxury penthouse, adjusting a gold necklace that probably cost more than Maya made in 6 months. Her phone buzzed constantly on the marble countertop, messages from fans, stylists, brand partners, and sycophants all vying for her attention. She was one of the city's most followed fashion influencers, and she wore that status like armor. She smiled at her reflection, perfect teeth gleaming against perfectly applied lipstick. That girl was standing too close to the road, she said, to her assistant Riley, who was organizing her schedule on a tablet. She should be grateful I didn't drive over her toes. Some people have no spatial awareness. Riley gave a nervous chuckle, the kind that said more about fear than agreement. Yeah, sure, Isabella. Isabella never looked back, literally or figuratively. She believed life was a competition between winners and losers, and she had been born into the winner's circle. The idea that her actions might have consequences beyond her immediate amusement simply didn't occur to her. But across town, Maya's day was stretching like a long shadow. Every time she bent down to mop, her back ached from the morning's tension. Every time she lifted her arms to dust, she felt the dampness still clinging to her skin. Still, she kept her chin up and whispered small prayers to herself. Prayers for strength, for patience, for one more day of grace. Around noon, she slipped behind the building to eat her lunch alone. It wasn't much, a piece of bread saved from breakfast and a bottle of water she'd refilled from the staff room tap. She sat on an old wooden crate, her fingers trembling slightly as she unwrapped the meager meal. The bread was slightly stale, but she ate it slowly, making it last, making it matter. She was so focused on her food that she didn't notice the man who had stopped near the hotel's main entrance. Marcus stood there, dressed casually in jeans and a simple black t-shirt, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses that made him look like any other pedestrian. He pretended to check his phone, but his eyes were trained on her. He watched how gently she ate, how she paused occasionally to check her own phone, Probably hoping for a message from Sophia, he realized. There was no makeup to hide behind, no glamour to shield her, just a young woman whom life kept pushing down, but who kept standing up anyway. Marcus felt his chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name. He didn't know Maya personally, but something about her reminded him powerfully of his late mother, a woman who had been strong and quiet, who had never asked for help even when she desperately needed it. He walked away slowly, but a plan was already forming in his mind, taking shape like a sculpture emerging from marble. She doesn't know it yet, he thought, but her story is about to change. The next morning dawned crisp and clear. Maya woke early, as she always did, and went through her quiet morning ritual. She tied Sophia's shoelaces with care, packed her sister's lunch with love, and kissed her forehead with the tenderness of someone who understood that these small moments were actually the biggest ones. "Be good at school, okay?" Maya whispered. Sophia nodded, her eyes still heavy with sleep but bright with trust. "You too, Maya. Have a good day at work." Maya took the long bus ride to Sterling Plaza Hotel, still wearing her backup uniform. Her good one was still soaking in a bucket at home, the mud stains proving more stubborn than her optimism, but not quite as persistent as her determination. When she arrived and opened her staff locker, something stopped her in her tracks. Inside was a small brown paper bag that definitely hadn't been there the night before. With trembling fingers, she opened it to find a pair of new cleaning gloves, bright yellow and still smelling of fresh rubber, a warm sandwich wrapped carefully in foil, and a folded note written in elegant handwriting. "For the girl who works with grace even when the world is unkind." Maya blinked, looking around the empty locker room as if the gift giver might suddenly materialize. But there was no one, just the familiar hum of the building's ventilation system, and the distant sounds of the hotel coming to life. She unwrapped the sandwich slowly, as if it might disappear if she moved too quickly. It was fresh, still warm, filled with ingredients she rarely allowed herself to buy: real turkey, crisp lettuce, ripe tomatoes. She hadn't had a hot breakfast in weeks, and this felt like a small miracle wrapped in aluminum foil. She didn't know who had left it, but for the first time in longer than she could remember, she smiled. Really smiled. Not the polite customer service smile she wore like a uniform, but a genuine expression of joy that started in her heart and bloomed across her face. Far away in his glass tower, Marcus sat at his desk, multiple computer monitors displaying various feeds and data streams. One screen showed the hotel's internal camera system, a feed he had legal access to thanks to a security partnership his company had with the hotel chain. He watched Maya's reaction to his gift and nodded to himself, satisfied. "Small steps," he whispered, already planning the next one. Meanwhile, Isabella was across town in a television studio, sitting under bright lights as she talked about her latest designer handbag collection. The host praised her elegance and business acumen, and she smiled for the cameras as if nothing in the world could touch her perfect existence. But the moment the cameras stopped rolling and the studio lights dimmed, Isabella's mask slipped. She snapped at her team with the viciousness of someone who had never learned that power should come with responsibility. "My coffee was too cold during the interview," she hissed at a young production assistant. "And someone needs to fix the lighting. In here, it's washing out my complexion. Fire whoever's responsible for catering. I don't care if it's their first day or their last." No one dared speak back. That was Isabella's world, cold, sharp, and filled with masks that everyone around her was forced to wear. But change was coming, whether she was ready for it or not. That evening, Marcus made another phone call, this one to the hotel's regional manager. "I want her promoted," he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. The manager hesitated, confusion evident in his voice. "Sir, are you referring to Maya Patel? She's not just anything." Marcus interrupted, his tone turning firm but not harsh. "She's an employee with untapped potential, and I want her moved to a position where that potential can be recognized." The next day, Maya was sweeping the hotel's grand lobby, her movements efficient and practiced, when the head supervisor called her over. She approached nervously, mentally reviewing her recent performance for any mistakes that might have caught management's attention. "Maya Patel," he said, consulting a clipboard with an expression she couldn't read. She nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. Yes, sir. You've been moved to VIP floor maintenance, effective tomorrow. Better pay, less heavy cleaning, more guest interaction. He looked up at her with something that might have been respect. Congratulations. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Sir, are you sure? I didn't apply for any promotion. I don't understand. It's been approved from above, he interrupted, but not unkindly. Someone upstairs thinks you're ready for more responsibility. She bowed slightly, a habit from childhood that her mother had taught her. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. The moment she walked away, whispers began to ripple through the staff like stones thrown into still water. VIP floor? For her, she must know someone important. Wonder who she's been charming behind the scenes. Maya heard every whisper, felt every suspicious glance, but she said nothing. She had no idea why her life was suddenly shifting, but deep down, beneath the confusion and disbelief, she felt a quiet joy taking root. That evening, she shared the news with Sophia, who hugged her so tightly that Maya thought her ribs might crack. See, Sophia whispered into her sister's shoulder. I told you good things happen to good people. You just have to wait for them sometimes. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his careful observation. He visited the hotel more frequently now, always in different disguises, always watching from the shadows. He saw her kindness in action, the way she treated every guest like royalty, even though no one had ever treated her that way. He watched her quiet strength, her resilience, the way she could find something to smile about even on the hardest days. He was falling for her, slowly and completely, like sinking into warm water. That same evening, Isabella received a manila envelope at her office. Inside was a photograph, grainy but unmistakably clear. It showed her white SUV mid-splash, muddy water arcing through the air toward a young woman who was clearly trying to get out of the way. A sticky note was attached in block letters. Not everyone forgets. Isabella's perfectly manicured fingers trembled slightly as she tore the note and threw it in her designer wastebasket. What kind of sick joke is this? She muttered to her empty office. But for the first time in her privileged life, she didn't feel untouchable. Back at the hotel, Maya found another note in her locker. This one simply read, "Keep shining. The world sees you, even when people pretend not to." She stared at the words, puzzled but deeply moved. She didn't know who was behind these gestures of kindness, but something was building around her, like a story she was living but couldn't yet read. That afternoon, Marcus returned to the hotel, but this time he wasn't hiding. He walked directly up to Maya while she was arranging fresh flowers in the main lobby, his heart beating faster than it had in years. "You again," she said with a playful smile that made his breath catch. "You really do love this hotel. I like seeing things grow," he replied, his gaze steady and warm. Maya tilted her head, studying him with those perceptive eyes that had first captured his attention. "You're not just a guest, are you?" He chuckled, caught in his own web of mystery. "You're very smart." He extended his hand formally, and she noticed for the first time how strong and gentle it was. "Marcus Brooks, owner of Brooks Industries. I'm part of the investment group that oversees this hotel." Maya froze, the flowers in her hand suddenly feeling weightless. You're Marcus Brooks? The Marcus Brooks? The billionaire." "I'm just Marcus," he said gently, his voice carrying none of the arrogance she might have expected. "And I've been watching you." Not in a creepy way, he added quickly, grinning in a way that transformed his entire face. "I saw what happened to you that morning. The car, the mud, and how you kept walking with your dignity intact." Her smile faded slightly as the memory returned. "You didn't deserve that," he continued, his voice soft but firm. "And I couldn't forget it. I couldn't forget you." She looked at him, unsure what to say, afraid to believe what she was hearing. "You don't have to say anything," Marcus added, understanding her silence. "Just know that I see you. Really see you." That night, Maya walked home in a daze, her heart racing not with fear, but with something she'd almost forgotten how to feel: hope. For the first time in longer than she could remember, someone powerful had seen her and treated her like she mattered, not as charity, not as an obligation, but as a person worthy of respect and attention. She couldn't sleep that night, staring at the ceiling while Sophia breathed peacefully beside her. Marcus Brooks, the Marcus Brooks, had spoken to her like an equal, like someone whose thoughts and dreams mattered. She wanted to believe it was real, but part of her feared it was all just temporary kindness that would evaporate with the morning light. The next day, as she walked to work, a familiar white SUV slowed beside her. Maya looked up and froze. It was Isabella, her window rolling down to reveal that same perfect face, though something in her expression had changed. "You're Maya, right?" Isabella's voice was different now, less sharp, more uncertain. Maya stepped back cautiously. "Yes. You've caused quite the stir," Isabella said, her sunglasses hiding her eyes, but not the tension in her voice. "Now people think I'm some kind of villain." Maya's brows furrowed in confusion. "I didn't do anything. I never spoke to anyone about what happened." Isabella leaned closer, and Maya could smell her expensive perfume. "You didn't have to. Playing the victim works wonders in today's world." "I never wanted to be a victim," Maya said firmly, finding strength she didn't know she possessed. "I just wanted to work in peace and take care of my family." Isabella laughed, but the sound was hollow. "You think Marcus really sees you? He's like all rich men. He'll get bored when the novelty wears off. Don't let a little attention fool you, sweetie." Then she drove off, leaving Maya standing there shaken but not broken. At the hotel, Marcus was waiting in the small cafe, a folder on the table before him and an expression of nervous anticipation on his face. When Maya walked in during her break, he waved her over with a smile that made her heart skip. "What's this?" she asked, looking at the official-looking documents. "A scholarship," he said, his voice gentle but filled with excitement. "Full hospitality management training, paid for completely. It starts next month. You'd still work here part-time if you wanted, but you'd also be building toward the future you described." Maya's hands trembled as she stared at the papers. "Why? Me?" "Because you never asked for anything," he said softly, leaning forward across the small table. "But you deserve everything." Tears filled her eyes, tears of joy, of disbelief, of gratitude so profound it felt like drowning in light at that moment. Unbeknownst to them both, Isabella watched from the hotel's main entrance, hidden behind designer sunglasses and a facade of indifference. The mud she had splashed wasn't just water. It had started something unstoppable, something beautiful, something that was lifting Maya higher than Isabella had ever imagined possible. Maya sat alone on the hotel's rooftop garden that evening, the scholarship papers still clutched in her hands like a holy text. The city lights twinkled below her, but her heart was brighter than all of them combined. She thought of her mother, gone too soon, but somehow still present in moments like these. She thought of all the nights she had cried silently, all the days she had worked through pain and exhaustion, wondering if any of it mattered. Now she knew. It all mattered. Every struggle, every small kindness, every moment she had chosen dignity over despair, it had all led to this. Marcus appeared beside her, 2 cups of hot cocoa in his hands, steam rising like incense in the cool evening air. "You're quiet," he said, offering her one of the cups. "I'm overwhelmed," she replied, accepting the warmth gratefully. "Is this really happening? Am I dreaming?" He sat beside her on the stone bench, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "You earned this, Maya. Every single piece of it." She smiled, an expression so genuine and radiant that it took his breath away. "I used to think people like you didn't see people like me." "I didn't always," Marcus admitted, his voice carrying the weight of honest reflection. "But watching you reminded me of my own mother. She was a cleaner too, raised me alone, never complained once. You have that same strength, that same grace under pressure." Maya looked at him in surprise. "You never talk about her in interviews." "Because people expect me to act like I built myself from nothing, alone," he said. "But the truth is, women like you and her, you're the ones who build everything that matters." The next day, the hotel announced Maya's scholarship during their monthly staff meeting. A small but genuine standing ovation followed, and even those who had once whispered now clapped with something approaching respect. Maya's quiet strength and authentic character had earned what no amount of politics or manipulation could buy: genuine admiration. But not everyone was celebrating. Isabella stormed into her father's office, her heels clicking against the marble floor like gunshots. Her designer outfit was flawless, but her composure was unraveling. "Why is everyone talking about her?" she snapped, her voice sharp with frustration. "She's just a cleaner." Marcus barely looked at me for years, and now he's handing out scholarships like she's some kind of princess. Her father looked up slowly, setting down his gold pen with deliberate care. His expression was calm, but his eyes held a disappointment that cut deeper than any anger could have. Because she earned it, Isabella. The respect, the recognition, the scholarship, all of it. And you. He paused, meeting her eyes directly. You still have a lot of growing up to do. For the first time in her privileged life, Isabella had nothing to say. That evening, Marcus walked Maya home under the soft glow of street lights. The road was quiet, and they talked and laughed gently as they strolled side by side. The easy conversation of two people discovering they fit together like pieces of a puzzle they hadn't known was incomplete. When they reached her building, the front door opened with a familiar creak, and a little girl stepped out with a bright smile that could have powered the entire neighborhood. Sophia, Maya said happily, opening her arms wide. I heard you laughing from upstairs, Sophia said, running into her sister's embrace. Then she looked up at Marcus with the direct, curious gaze that only children possess. Are you my sister's friend? Maya's first day on the VIP floor felt like stepping into another world. The air smelled different here, fresh flowers and expensive polish instead of industrial cleaning chemicals. The carpets were softer, the walls quieter, the very atmosphere more refined. She walked with her head respectfully lowered, trying not to draw attention, but her work spoke for itself. Every surface she touched sparkled under her care. One guest watched her quietly from a nearby lounge chair. It was Marcus again, hidden behind a newspaper and sunglasses, observing the poetry of her movements as she worked. Finally, he stood and approached her. Excuse me, he said, his voice carefully casual. Do you know where the Sky Lounge is? Maya turned and offered him the same gentle smile she gave every guest. Yes, sir. I'd be happy to show you the way. As they walked through the elegant corridor, he ventured carefully into conversation. How long have you worked here? Almost 2 years, she replied, her voice warm and professional. It's challenging work, but it pays the bills, and I'm grateful for steady employment. He nodded thoughtfully. Do you enjoy it? She hesitated for just a moment, and in that pause, he heard volumes. I don't know if anyone dreams of cleaning floors for a living, she said finally, but I'm thankful for the opportunity. I try to do my best, no matter what the job is. Marcus stopped walking and looked at her directly. You do more than that, he said softly. You shine. Maya gave a small laugh, surprised by the compliment. Thank you. I think. He didn't reveal who he really was, not yet. But as he watched her walk away, still carrying that quiet light that had first caught his attention, he knew with absolute certainty that his life had been changed by hers later. That day, Isabella sat across from her father in their favorite high-end restaurant, her frustration barely hidden behind flawless makeup and designer clothing. The tension between them was thick enough to cut. Someone's targeting me, she said, swirling her wine glass without drinking, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. First that photograph, now people are whispering about me online. It's like there's some kind of campaign against me. Her father looked calm as he sipped his drink, his expression unreadable. Or maybe, he said quietly, someone's just holding up a mirror. Isabella's jaw tightened defensively. Please, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm being victimized by someone with too much time on their hands. But deep down, in a place she rarely allowed herself to visit, part of her knew the truth. Somewhere in her past, maybe many somewheres, she had stepped on people without looking back, had used her privilege as a weapon instead of a responsibility. Back at the hotel, Maya found another small bouquet in her locker. No note this time, just flowers, simple daisies that somehow meant more than roses. She stared at them, confused but deeply moved. Someone was watching over her, but not to harm her, to help her, to see her, to remind her that she mattered. The more Maya rose, the more attention she drew. Some staff members whispered in admiration, impressed by her grace and work ethic. But others grew cold with jealousy and suspicion. Carmen, a senior cleaner who had worked at the hotel for 6 years, wasn't taking Maya's promotion well. She gathered a small group of disgruntled employees around her like a general marshaling troops. She just got here and she's already on the VIP floor, Carmen muttered, her voice dripping with resentment. Must be doing something behind the scenes, if you know what I mean. Nobody gets promoted that fast without connections. Maya noticed the stares and cold shoulders whenever she entered a room. Conversations stopped when she approached, resumed when she left. She tried to ignore it and kept doing her job with excellence. But the isolation stung more than she wanted to admit. That day, Marcus returned to the hotel again, this time requesting Maya's section specifically. When she was called to clean a private lounge, she found him sitting there, still in his casual disguise. "No cleaning needed today," he said kindly. "I just wanted to thank you for your kindness the other day." Maya smiled politely, professional as always. "I was just doing my job, sir." He looked at her for a long moment, seeing past the uniform to the person beneath. "If you could do anything with your life, what would it be?" The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her about her dreams in longer than she could remember. She paused, considering whether to give the safe, expected answer or the true one. "I'd study hospitality management," she said finally, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Maybe manage a place like this someday. But school costs money, and right now, life is about survival, not dreams." Marcus nodded, storing every word like precious treasure. Later that night, he sat in his study at home, staring out at the city lights, and began making plans that would change everything. The next morning, Carmen put her jealousy into action. She snuck into the supply room before dawn and switched Maya's cleaning solution with something dangerously slippery. Then she waited, watching from the shadows like a predator. When the morning shift began, Maya cleaned the main lobby as always, unaware that every step she took was potentially setting a trap. Later that morning, an elderly guest slipped on the floor she had just cleaned, falling hard and crying out in pain and shock. "Who cleaned here last?" The manager shouted, his face red with anger and embarrassment as hotel staff rushed to help the injured guest. All eyes turned to Maya. She stood frozen, her face pale with confusion and growing dread. "I swear I didn't do anything wrong," she said, her voice shaking with the injustice of it all. "I used the same products I always use, the same technique. I don't understand what could have happened." But no one seemed interested in her explanations. Blame was easier than investigation, and she was the convenient target, except for one person. Marcus had been watching from the hotel's coffee shop, and something about the situation felt wrong to him. He immediately requested that the hotel's security footage be reviewed, using his influence to ensure a thorough investigation. What the cameras revealed shocked everyone. Carmen could be clearly seen switching the cleaning chemicals, her movements furtive and deliberate. The evidence was undeniable. The manager found Maya later that day, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and respect. "Maya, I owe you an apology. We've reviewed the security footage, and it's clear that someone sabotaged your work. You're completely cleared of any wrongdoing." She left the office in tears, not of sadness this time, but of relief so profound it felt like being reborn. From a distance, Marcus watched her emerge from the administrative offices, and his heart clenched with protective emotion. "She doesn't even know I saved her," he thought. "But someday, I'll tell her everything." Isabella scrolled through her social media feeds, her perfect composure cracking like ice in spring. There it was, a blurry but recognizable photo of her white SUV with a caption that made her blood run cold. "Some people think money erases the need for manners." The post had been shared hundreds of times, and though her face wasn't visible in the image, people were connecting dots with the efficiency of a digital detective agency. "Who's spreading this nonsense?" she snapped at Riley, her assistant. Riley hesitated, then took a breath and spoke the words she'd been holding back for weeks. "Maybe you should apologize. Maybe this is a chance to make things right." Isabella laughed, but the sound was bitter instead of amused. "Apologize? To a street cleaner?" I don't even remember her face. But her confidence was cracking now, developing fissures that led in uncomfortable truths. Back at the hotel, Maya's name had been cleared, and the atmosphere around her began to change. Managers now greeted her with respectful nods. Some staff members even offered warm smiles and words of support. Carmen had been suspended for 2 weeks, and while Maya held no grudge, she kept her distance from the politics and jealousies that seemed to swirl around every workplace. Marcus bent down slightly, bringing himself to her eye level, and smiled. "Hi, Sophia. I've heard so much about you. You're even more wonderful than Maya described. Maya held her sister close, her heart full to overflowing. She's my everything, she said softly, and Marcus could hear the fierce love and protection in those simple words. Looking at them, two sisters standing strong together against whatever the world might throw at them, touched something deep inside him. After Sophia went back inside with promises to meet Marcus properly soon, he and Maya stood together at the building's front gate, eyeing the soft light filtering through the lobby windows. Marcus looked at Maya with eyes full of quiet wonder. "Maya," he said, his voice gentle as falling snow. "This all started with mud and cruelty. But maybe it ends with something beautiful." Maya's heart beat faster, and she looked up at him with eyes full of hope and growing love. "Maybe," she whispered. "It's just the beginning." 1 year later, Sterling Plaza Hotel held a special gala to celebrate its 20th anniversary. The ballroom glowed with crystal chandeliers and soft candlelight. Live jazz music played from a small stage, and the entire city's elite mingled in their finest attire. Maya walked in wearing a simple sky blue gown that she had chosen herself, not because it was expensive, but because it made her feel like herself, only elevated. She didn't have diamonds or a famous designer label, but she didn't need them. Her posture, her grace, and her radiant smile were ornaments enough. Guests turned to look as she entered, some whispering in recognition, others simply admiring the quiet elegance she carried like a natural perfume. She wasn't just the former cleaner tonight. She was the guest of honor, the living embodiment of what could happen when kindness met opportunity. Marcus stood beside her, beaming with pride that seemed to emanate from every pore. He hadn't proposed yet, but everyone in the room could see it in his eyes. He was completely, utterly, eternally hers. Maya was called to the stage, and the hotel director handed her a crystal plaque engraved with words that made her eyes shimmer. "For strength, humility, and the spirit that lifts us all." She took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone, her voice carrying clearly across the hushed ballroom. "A year ago, I was just a girl walking to work in worn-out shoes, with mud on my clothes and invisible to most of the world," she began, her words painting a picture that everyone could see. "I was made to feel small by someone's cruelty, but I was also lifted up by someone else's kindness." The room fell completely silent, every person hanging on her words. "I don't stand here tonight because I'm lucky. I stand here because I kept going, because someone believed in me before I could believe in myself." She looked over at Marcus, and her smile could have lit up the entire city. And because kindness, real kindness, is always louder than status, stronger than wealth, and more lasting than any temporary power we might think we possess. Tears sparkled in several eyes throughout the audience, and even the hotel staff standing at the back of the room straightened their shoulders with pride. Later that night, as the gala wound down and the last guests filtered out into the cool evening air, Maya did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She returned to the exact spot where her journey had begun, the place where Isabella's SUV had splashed mud on her dreams and somehow, impossibly, watered the seeds of her future. The road had been repaved since then, smooth and clean, with no trace of the puddle that had changed everything. She slipped off her elegant heels and walked barefoot across the pavement, feeling the solid ground beneath her feet. Marcus watched from a few steps away, smiling with understanding and love. "What are you doing?" he asked gently. Maya paused, looking down at the place that had once brought her such humiliation and now felt like sacred ground. "Leaving the last trace of who I used to be," she said, her voice filled with quiet ceremony, "and stepping fully into who I am now." Without hesitation, Marcus took off his own shoes and joined her, barefoot beside her, equal in all the ways that mattered, proud to walk whatever path lay ahead. Together they moved forward, slowly and silently, not just as two people who had found love, but as living proof that even when life throws mud at your dreams, sometimes, if you keep walking, keep believing, keep being kind, a flower can bloom. And sometimes that flower blooms so brightly that the whole world stops to notice, stops to remember that dignity and grace can never be bought, only earned. Sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the ugliest moments. Sometimes the people who try to make you small end up making you stronger. And sometimes, when you least expect it, Someone sees your light even when you've forgotten you carry it. Maya and Marcus walked into their future together, leaving footprints on fresh pavement and carrying with them the kind of love that transforms. Not just two hearts, but everyone it touches. If you loved this story of transformation, kindness, and the power of seeing people's true worth, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories that remind us of the extraordinary potential hidden in ordinary moments. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply see someone, really see them, and believe in their light even when they've forgotten how to shine. This has been the Black Side Stories. Until next time, remember, behind every great achievement is someone who stood watch, someone who believed, someone who preserved what matters when no one else was looking.